It's a big day today. I finally get to reveal how I made my favorite custom to date. We're going to be looking at Lobo and his pal the Preserver for this video. Both were made years before filming, so you'll see a mix of pictures and a bit of video from other customs. Without further ado, let's start cracking with the eggs recipe. What's that name, you ask? It's only the best name I've ever heard for this character, and it comes from the always entertaining podcast Jump on the Bat-Wagon. If you haven't heard of it, DCAU extraordinaire James Strecker of the Watchtower database is introducing the animated universe to his friend Brian, one episode at a time. They don't take it super seriously, and Brian coined the name for the Preserver when he couldn't think of his name in his recap for the episode. Both episodes covering these are linked in the description and will be a delight to listen to. Back to the little guy's recipe. You may wonder, why would I ever make him? I'm kind of on a mission to make almost every memorable character or design from the DCAU, and I randomly stumbled upon this Ben 10 figure one day. Only later did I learn that the same guy was involved in these two characters' designs, so it was perfect to make Eggy out of. I figured I could pop Cannonbolt's arms and legs off, and then he'd need a robe of some kind. I ended up finding a clearanced Rogue One Krennic, and I thought his trimmed cape would work pretty well for Mr. Wrinkles. With his recipe all set, let's hatch a plan for his modifications. As I mentioned, I needed to pop out his forearms and legs to start. He won't be as easy as a normal heat and pop though. Since he's a mass-produced figure, you'll need to crack the torso a bit to get the legs out, fitting for an egg. Next, you'll want to Dremel off all of his facial and torso details and some off of his shoulders. Also, reshape the bottom where his hips were to get a more rounded look there. For the robe, we'll need to trim the cape pretty short to use the bottom of it, then trim again to fit underneath his shoulders. The character's forearms are super skinny, and I had the thrifty idea of using Q-tips as the base for his arms. I ended up sculpting over them and then making a pseudo joint for them to rotate a bit too. Then more epoxy overall, and some to form his unique gesturing fingers. A lot of the sculpting will be on his face and top of the head shape to really get it nice and eggy. The final epoxy details are for the black piping that goes around his body. Looks good, so I figured I could move on to attach the robe with some glue and more epoxy to blend. Any final sanding or dremeling and he's ready for paint. Eggy Wrinkles will need 5 colors to paint him upright. Light blue for his eyes, a very pale yellow for his skin, a desaturated green for his robe, a dark red-orange for his shirt, and black for any accents or details. Prime him with your dull coat and then start with this vanilla yellow for his skin on his head and hands. Give that a few thin coats and then paint his orange shirt color. A few more coats there and then his green robe. Finish up with the black striping he has around the bottom of his torso and on his wrists, and then pick out the blue for his eyes, and lastly Eggy's trademark wrinkles with a paint pen or thin paint marker. And with that, he's poached. Let's move on to his captive, the main event for the main man, Lobo. The big man is finally here. Lobo's irreverent spirit makes him one of my favorite parts of Superman's whole show, and thus I really wanted to capture him well. I went back and forth between using an Etrigan torso and arms, or a TNBA Bane set, and settled on the latter because the former would have been too big. Then for his legs, I wondered if Etrigans would at least work here instead. Not really, they were shaped a little too weird to use as a base, and they were going to be too tall. I began searching online up and down for any and all animated 1/12 scale types of figures. It was here where I found the wonderful line of figures from Disney Toy Box. At the time, they only had a wave or two out, and Thor immediately stood out to me as a decent candidate. I wouldn't know until I had him in hand how he would truly scale, so I picked one up and couldn't have been happier with the size. Lobo is drawn with shorter legs than you might expect, and the slightly smaller scale of the line would work wonders with the Bane torso. Next was his head. When in doubt, always see if the original figure's torso-head combo could work for the face, because you won't have to do any modding to get it to fit on the neck peg. So I thought I'd try Bane's head. The last thing would be his jacket piece. Harvey Bullock is the only one who has a big enough coat, and it happened to fit just snugly to work. Now let's see what modifications I needed to do. Bane and Thor will obviously need some pretty significant work to become Lobo, so we'll start with heating him up to remove his head, venom cord, necklace, belt, and legs. Heat up Toy Box Thor to remove his legs at the hip too. Lastly, heat up Bullock to remove his coat and then trim it for a pseudo-cropped look above Bane's waist. Next, you'll want to Dremel down Bane's wrist attachments since Lobo only has gloves instead. Mix up some epoxy to cover the gaps from the removed belt and necklace. Extend his hips down a little further because Thor's legs won't be as tall as Bane's were. Attaching Thor's legs at the hips will be a bit of a chore, but I ended up using a combination of green stuff and super glue to get it to work. Epoxy over any roughness left over from the Dremeled wrists, and then we can start bulking up his arms to give him even more muscle. Lobo has more distinctly round muscle shapes on his forearms and biceps, so just add some epoxy to get the overall look and smear it in around the edges. If they end up too big, you can always refine them down with your Dremel on low. Let those cure and then start adding jean details and thickening up his boots. I put seams down the sides of his legs as well as the appearance of a zipper and pockets in the front. His knees need knee pads with thick trim around the tops and bottoms, and his boots need to be thicker overall with studded straps across the tops and thicker grooved bottoms. Bonus, those will give him just that extra bit of height he needs to scale properly with Superman. Back up to his torso, you can add some epoxy to his chest to give him his dividing line for his pecs, and then round out his tank top line a little bit. While some of that cures, we can start on his head. Begin by thickening him up all over because Bane's head is too thin. Start with his jaw and then up on his brow and forehead. You can start the first few pieces of his wacky hair now too. As that dries, move back down to the arms to sculpt a nice thick ring of epoxy to represent his rolled up sleeve on his left, and then up to his right shoulder to add some on the end of the jacket piece to look ripped up hanging over his shoulder. You may need to use some green stuff here because it will blend better with the rubber, and then it'll be a little flexible if the arm runs into it. Another round of epoxy on his head to form his closed mouth, another layer of hair, and move down to the belt to sculpt his trademark skull belt buckle. Add his big mustache and sideburns, followed by his nose, more layers and hair, and then the thin rings around his wrists to represent the ends of his gloves. Add a little more hair, and maybe some more hair. Sand down or Dremel the transition points as needed, and you can finally get to painting this guy. Lobo is pretty simple with his color choices, needing a black, a white, a blue, a gray, red for his eyes, and the lightest blue for his skin. Prime him with your dull coat and then assign the colors to match his appearance. Vallejo black on the jacket, gloves, boots, belt, hair, and facial details. This blue for his jeans, a darker gray for his tank top, glove rings, sleeve roll, boot details, and jacket lapels, but then a lighter gray for his knee pads and bootstrap studs. Rather than painting stars on his knee pads, I found these stickers that actually emulate animated stars better since they're not perfectly shaped. These days I probably would have painted the stars on, but this totally still works. His knee pads are also trimmed with white, and his belt studs and buckle are white as well. By the way, the buckle studs were given to him from the TNBA Mutant Leader figure, but you can always sculpt some too. His skin color is this very light blue because if you look at his reference from the show, his skin is not the same white as his clothing details. Get those red eyes in there and then pull out your paint marker or paint pen to give him arm hair. The last thing will be cell shaded gray on his leather parts and hair if you like that sort of thing, and he's done. As I've said before, there's just something about the way he turned out that makes him my top favorite. He's a little rough in places since I made him earlier on, but it only adds to his charm and fits his personality. Wait a minute, his personality, and his job, is being a bounty hunter, so he needs a weapon and a bounty. Lobo's accessories could be a few different things, and at one point I thought about making his bike. I'm actually still thinking about it now, but it would be 3D printed and end up acting as a prop or backdrop for him. As far as what he can hold, I wanted his signature blaster and the aforementioned bounty. I figured Squeak and the yellow pot would be perfect as it represents his yeah whatever attitude using anything he needs to get the job done. Both objects started from random geometric shapes I had held onto for just such an occasion. The gun's handle and trigger were donated from a TNBA Scarecrow, however, because that was going to fit best in Bane's hands. The barrel was from the cover of a refrigerator filter cap cut in half. Then the rest was all epoxy bits shaped onto it geometrically to match the show. The Winnie the Pooh and his honey pot started out from one of those silica gel canisters you might find in a vitamin bottle. I just wrapped some epoxy around it and shaped it to resemble a pot. Then I started sculpting the back end and tail of Squeak and painted him to look right. The gun was primed gray with black details, and those complete his look. Much better. Seriously, even filming him again for this, I just have to stare a little bit and kind of marvel at him. I can hear Brad Garrett when I look at him, and that's one of the best compliments I can think of. Halfway through making this video, I thought of a really cool idea for an accessory for the Preserver that could also be shared with Lobo. I wanted to make that little data disc with the Superman hologram to give Eggy on the shelf. I cut out a little square from one of my styrene sheets and then bought some clear acetate for my inkjet printer. I used a screen cap from the show and then printed it to scale, and boom! Look at that cool effect! Now they can pair even better together on the shelf. That wraps up today's video. Thanks for watching. Drop a like if you enjoyed it and subscribe for more monthly content like this and occasional shorts featuring tips or additional customs. Go ahead and leave any questions or requests for future characters in the comments below. Follow me on Instagram if you want to see more customs like these and all of my latest work. Join me next time as we celebrate Halloween and the 25th anniversary of one of the darkest stories in the DCAU, Return of the Joker. I'll be revising my Batman Beyond era Joker to be much more screen accurate, as well as making the disturbing little JJ for the first time. Check out the rest of my catalog of videos while you impatiently wait for the next one. Have a good one, and happy customizing!